clearly has something special that makes all these tech billionaires love what he's doing.
MrBeast was one of the most impressive people I've met in a really, really, really long time.
Totally agree.
Oh, he's gonna be a fucking multi-billionaire.
That's Chamath Palihapitiya, one of Silicon Valley's most well-known billionaires. We all know that MrBeast has grown a huge fan base, but making $1 billion is no small feat, and it's definitely never been done before on YouTube. In order to crack the 3 commas club, you typically need to be pioneering an entirely new technology, and that's how Chamath usually makes his money. Chamath comes from the tech world and was one of the first executives at Facebook. He knows how to identify entrepreneurs who are dreaming big and planning for the future. Take Virgin Galactic, for example, where Chamath is chairman of the board. The company is worth over $3 billion, but that makes sense. It's literally rocket science. MrBeast just makes YouTube videos, so how is he going to make $1 billion? Plenty of big YouTubers have made lots of money and then fizzled out. So what makes Chamath so sure that Jimmy Donaldson will be able to break out and keep up with the billionaires in Silicon Valley? In order to answer this, I compared Jimmy's operation first to other YouTube channels and then to popular tech startups. What I found really shocked me, so I boiled down my findings into 3 key takeaways that explain why MrBeast is more like a Silicon Valley tech founder than a typical YouTuber.
I just kept going and reinvesting, and basically the entire time. For the last 8 or 9 years, every dollar I've made, I just spent it the next month on content. I just did that every single month, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and here we are.
First up, we have to talk raw numbers. Obviously, Jimmy is breaking records left and right on here. He now has 165 million subscribers across all of his channels and broke 20 billion views last year. Those are some pretty staggering numbers, and they've clearly led to some big paydays from YouTube directly, as well as sponsors. And even the most conservative estimates peg his earnings in the tens of millions of dollars. Everyone knows that big YouTubers can wind up making millions of dollars. The problem is that these earnings typically top out very quickly. Sure, a kid in a living room can become a millionaire before their 20th birthday, but they're never going to build a business that could go public on the NASDAQ. These YouTube channels are fundamentally lifestyle businesses, but MrBeast is trying to be the first YouTuber to break out of that mold. His plan starts with continually investing any money he earns into making better and better videos. The first time he got a sponsorship deal for 10 grand, he gave it all away in the next video. And he's repeated that formula over and over again, consistently reinvesting every dollar he makes for growth. It's a great model, and it's clearly working well. Just look at the $10 million warehouse complex he was able to buy in North Carolina. This is the exact mindset that tech founders have when building a startup. They aggressively reinvest in order to capture as much of the market as possible. The name of the game is getting big and building a moat around your business so competitors can't attack you. And that's essentially what Jimmy is doing. He's building a machine for churning out high-budget YouTube videos so that no one will be able to compete with him. But even so, those numbers still look small in comparison to most Silicon Valley businesses. Keep in mind, MrBeast spent $10 million on an entire facility. Facebook makes $10 million every single hour. Successful technology companies are all about scale, and even though Jimmy is incredibly successful by YouTube standards, he just isn't in the same league as typical tech startups. Silicon Valley money is on another level. Just look at the private plane that Chamath purchased for $75 million. That's more than 7 times as expensive as Jimmy's entire studio complex. Jimmy might be courtside seat rich at this point, but Chamath is by the whole team rich. Literally, Chamath owns the Golden State Warriors. But all that ridiculous flexing aside, Chamath clearly knows there's something special going on inside of that studio in North Carolina, even if they aren't bringing in Silicon Valley type money just yet. The question still remains though, if the actual numbers Jimmy is putting up aren't enough to turn heads in the tech world, then why is he getting all this attention?
You were making no money, you had very little audience.
Yeah, I remember thinking every day back then, I'm never gonna be a YouTuber. After year after year, this is never gonna happen, but yeah.
But you still stuck with it.
If you look at his content, you'll see that he perfectly fits the mold of a Silicon Valley tech founder. This is because he's not only extremely hardworking, but he's also incredibly innovative. If you scroll back through his channel, you'll see that he spent years studying what worked and what didn't on YouTube and became obsessed with the platform. Then, once he'd learned the basics of how to make good videos, he started pushing things forward. Some of his first viral videos were completely untested formats that really broke the mold. No one had tried to count to 100,000 before on YouTube, so it stuck out and got a ton of views. This kind of outside-the-box thinking is worshipped in Silicon Valley, so you can see why Chamath would bet on Jimmy. But here's the thing. There are plenty of other weird creators on YouTube making bizarre content, and they aren't getting this much attention, so that can't be it. I'm sure those traits are important, but we all know what really makes a MrBeast video stand out on YouTube. the giveaways. In pretty much every video, Jimmy is giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's an incredibly charitable individual and has said that no matter how much money he makes, he intends to give it all away. This really makes Jimmy stand out from the crowd on YouTube. So many creators are obsessed with material wealth and just want to buy a fancy car or expensive watch as soon as possible. It's honestly a breath of fresh air to see someone strike it so big on YouTube and still be able to stay humble. But plenty of people in Silicon Valley donate massive amounts of money. In fact, there's even a website called The Giving Pledge where you can see dozens of tech billionaires who've promised to give away more than half of their wealth. It's almost expected at this point that if you make billions of dollars in tech, you're going to give it to charity eventually. Jimmy has donated millions of dollars to charity, but that's just a drop in the bucket by the standards of big tech. So if it's not his philanthropic efforts that are getting him all this recognition, then what is it? Well, there's actually just one thing that makes MrBeast completely different from every other YouTube creator. He's not actually a creator anymore. Let me explain. In a typical technology company, there are two kinds of roles: individual contributors and managers. The individual contributors actually write the code, and the managers just set the strategy. No one expects Elon Musk to assemble all those Teslas by hand after all. Elon is a manager, and that's why he's been able to create such a massive company. As a tech company grows, there's often a moment where the founders stop being individual contributors and become managers. Mark Zuckerberg really was writing code in the early days of Facebook, but now he has thousands of software developers working for him, and he can focus entirely on creating a long-term strategy. Most creators on YouTube never make the transition from individual contributor to manager. They just can't figure out how to delegate properly, so they can never achieve truly massive scale. One of Jimmy's closest collaborators is Mark Rober, but Mark's channel couldn't be more different from Jimmy's.
Part of that then is also the edit and packaging that together, and I just don't know how I would outsource that.
To be clear, I absolutely love Mark Rober's content, and clearly he's doing incredibly well. He's just not thinking about scale in the same way as MrBeast. Over the last year, Mark posted just one new video per month, where MrBeast is now posting dozens of videos across more than 10 different channels. And even channels that are focused on business seem to still be hesitant to scale as aggressively as MrBeast.
Everything is done by me. So every word you hear from me is scripted by me.
Yep.
Every topic is picked by me.
Yep.
I film everything myself.
Graham Stephan also runs a great channel and makes a fantastic living through YouTube and his related businesses, but he just isn't thinking like a Silicon Valley startup, at least not yet. These are super common beliefs, but they hold creators back from their full potential. MrBeast understands that it's simply impossible for him to do everything himself, so he has to delegate.
You know, every YouTuber says it. It's like, no one will ever be able to replicate my style. I gotta edit it. But newsflash, someone can. It's actually not as difficult as you think.
And that's the key to scaling a business, becoming a great manager. You'll never be able to learn everything yourself, so you have to delegate. Just look at MrBeast's Squid Game video. He had an entire visual effects team working round the clock to deliver Hollywood-level results. Even if Jimmy spent the next 10 years studying visual effects, he'd never be able to create what an experienced team could do. The same can be said for his Spanish language channel. If he insisted on doing everything himself, he would need to learn Spanish and film everything twice, which would slow his entire production down. Instead, he works with a team to dub his existing videos and delegates everything.